Editing was a pain in the neck, and by the end of it, I was about ready to throw the book out the window if I had a book to physically throw out the window. So let's talk about it. Hello, friends. My name is Jake Montanez, and I recently published my first novel, Night of the Illumination, on Kindle Unlimited. And I wanted to talk about the editing process that I went through to get it finished and ready for publication. So I've seen a lot of different things about whether you should be editing while you're writing or to just write everything out and then edit later. I'm kind of a combination of perfectionist. I try to get it as edited as possible while I'm doing it the first time around. But that doesn't mean I catch everything. I tend to have my writing as impeccable as I can get it. And that's why I always like to have a second set of eyes take a look at everything. So I wrote my first draft in November of 2021. That was actually one novel, but it now encompasses the entire scope of three novels because I decided I would go back and rewrite it in three different parts because the book had enough beats to it that I could expand and create three different novels out of it, make a trilogy, and have a little bit more fun with it and explore some creative juices. When I decided I wanted to go back and do the rewrites, I started initially taking that first third of the book, which was going to become what is now Night of the Illumination, and would read a chapter, rewrite that chapter, change the point of view if I needed to, and basically expand on what was already there. And as I progressed through, I kept diverging a bit more and a bit more and a bit more from that original version of the book. Needless to say, what I ended up with is a little bit different from what the original version of the story was, and I was satisfied with it at that point and started working on the sequel, and I got about two-thirds of it there. That was what I did last NaNoWriMo 2023, and it's been sitting there ever since for about a year, and I haven't touched it really since because I decided from then I wanted to go back to that first book and do a little bit more editing and actually just move forward with getting it edited and published. If I didn't do that, it was never going to come out. So I contacted an editor sometime in, I want to say February of last year. She didn't have any spot in her schedule until June, so I had to wait until then. So I did a little bit more touch-up editing on the side, but honestly, I only got about 5 or 6 chapters in. I didn't do a full personal edit of the entirety of the book. So that's kind of on me. Gave it to the editor. She came back with all of her markups, all the typographical errors, any words that she thought were irrelevant or could be changed. She had a lot of things that she wanted me to excise from the book, which I ultimately did for the most part, and had a lot of nice questioning remarks for different passages in the book, like what things I could clarify, what things felt like they were lacking in description, and some of them were just like, hey, I really like this visual. So that was kind of a good thing for me to see that some of the language that I used and the way I constructed it resonated with somebody. Now, when all of that was said and done, I know I've talked about it in other videos, I went through and just did all those quick, easy cuts, sliced out all the words that were irrelevant, put in all the different punctuation I may have missed or took out punctuation that wasn't necessary, and then had to go through all of the deeper deep cuts that she had, things that needed to be restructured, reformatted, concepts that needed to be addressed, things with the world building that weren't quite as developed as she thought should be done, and expanded on those. And ultimately I had cut down everything from about 80,300 words is what I submitted to her, down to something like 73,000. So I lost 7,000 words with all of those cuts. And then as I built everything back up again, it did get up to about 81,000, almost 82,000 words. And at that point, I thought I was at a lock. I was like, okay, I've rebuilt everything from the ground up, gotten everything to where I needed it to be. At that point, I should have probably gotten an extra editor on there, but I didn't. So I didn't have, because I didn't have the money in my budget to do that. And if I did have the money, it would have to go towards the second book to get that edited, because that was a pretty decent chunk of cash. So instead, what I decided to do was I recognized that there were some filler words, then just things along those lines that, words like now, don't really add anything to the narrative. My editor didn't catch those, or when I was rewriting, I reintroduced those in various locations. So what I did was something super simple, still time consuming and pain in the ass, but I looked up filler words, and there was not really a table of them, but it listed several. I think that I picked like the top 16 of them or so, and entered them in one by one to my file. Controlled F, find, then. Does this word belong here? Yes or no? If it was in the context of dialogue, it got more of a pass than it did during the bulk of the prose, and I just started slicing. Went through every single one of these words, and I'm sure there are words that could be still considered filler words in there. That's fine. I had to make some judicious choices on what I did or did not cut, but by and large, I'd say 90% of them got the boot, and some of it was pretty obvious that the word didn't need to be there at all and changed absolutely nothing about the meaning of any of the sentences. In other places, I needed to come up with creative ways to redirect or rewrite or reconstruct how the sentence or even the paragraph was formatted, and it forced me to be more adaptive to what I was doing, and ultimately, I believe, made my prose feel a little bit better. After I did that pass with all of those separate words individually, cutting those down, that basically took an entire weekend of my time that I hadn't planned on. I thought I would have been able to upload a week earlier, but I didn't because I was doing those last minute edits. I do think the end result is a lot stronger than it was before I got to that point, and I dropped my word count down from 80, like almost 82,000 words down to 80,000. It hovered around 80,070 to 80,030-ish words as I went in and cut some out, added a couple in, cut some out, added a couple in. But ultimately, the book came in very lean. It's not a bad length. I think print copy is supposed to be around 333 pages, plus or minus a couple extra for title pages and things like that. So it's an okay sized book. I honestly was worried it might come in under 300, but page size doesn't really matter. It also may be the font size I picked made it a little bit longer paper count wise. But that was my editing process as I went through writing this book, and everybody's going to get different mileage out of it. People who have more money can afford editors more often or through all the different stages of the process. I didn't have any beta readers to tell me anything about my story that needed to be changed before I sent it to an editor, and that's something I'm going to try to address with book 2, which is going to be called Desert of Storms. But when I'm done with that, I'm going to probably go through it with that same cut the filler words idea before I even go to the editor. That should hopefully make her job a lot easier. A lot of the world building has already been done. I'm transitioning from the location I was in, and it's in a different location now. It's in a desert setting rather than a town setting. But the concepts behind the magic and everything is all there, so developmental editing I don't think will be as big of a need for that second book, and it'll be more like line and copy editing to help tighten up anything that I overlook through my own passes of editing. But the biggest lesson learned is I should probably have gone through it a few more times legitimately with a more fine-toothed comb than I already had done before giving it off to the editor. That way when I get those final edits back, they hopefully wouldn't be as deep as they were and easier to get through so that I can turn around the book in a faster time frame once those edits are done and be able to make it publishable and ready for reading. Hopefully that's been an enlightening idea of what the editing process was for me. Everybody's got their own way of doing things, obviously, but that's what worked for me, and that's how I got my book edited and published. If you want to read it, it's available now on Kindle Unlimited. It's called Night of the Illumination, and thank you for watching me. Have a nice day.